continuing a celebration of Meherabad's life and work today by doing a real focus on the Memorial Tower, which was inaugurated December 23rd, 2019, 75 years to the day when Baba had dedicated that area. Ted Judson is the designer and construction supervisor of that tower, as well as the building you are in, as well as the NPR and many other buildings in Meherabad. And Peter, is it 40 years? It's 40 years that Ted had. 44 years as a resident at Meherabad.
And he's going to be 45.
So today, he will give us a wonderful talk with the slides, obviously. And Meherabad said that this tower shall be a silent proclamation of the unity of all religions. So, thank you. Please welcome Ted Judson.
Jai Baba, thanks for coming. I hope this is interesting to you all because it's mainly how it was built. It's going to be a little technical. And I haven't really prepared a talk, but I have a lot of slides here. I took pictures wherever, whenever, and wherever we worked on the tower over a 10-year period. And I'm relying on the slides to jog my memory about what went on at the time. It's been quite an adventure with what I would say more miracles than I could even remember or tell you about. It's the project by far where I felt Baba's total control. And I felt I was in control on some buildings, but this one he just took over. And in the beginning he kind of fooled me into thinking I could do it. No problem, I can build this. And then I discovered I needed a lot of help and a lot of things I had no idea I had to get done. I'm going to just read a little history and a little, just get you started. And then I'm just going to start turning the slides over and over and talking about them. And there are a lot of slides, so some I'm just going to push the button. So the story of the tower begins with the deaths of two of Baba's closest disciples. The first was Framrose Dada Chanji, who we know as Chanji. He was Baba's first secretary, and he recorded much of the history of the early years in his Chanji's diaries. He died in Kashmir and was buried in a cemetery in Srinagar. Then in December of 1944, preparations were being made to observe Mera's birthday at Meherabad. Rustam Irani, who we know as Masaji, who was the father of Pendu and Naju, he died while overseeing the cooking for Mera's birthday program. So Baba was informed of Masaji's death, and when he arrived from Pimplegown, he ordered a grave to be dug between the tracks and the road, which is where the tower is now. A coffin was brought and Masaji's body was placed in it. And when the coffin was lowered into the ground, Baba tossed earth over it and placed flowers over the grave before the pit was filled. Now, after Masaji died, Baba dictated a list of men and women who'd been closely connected with him, that had passed on. Baba gave these names to Adi Sr., telling him to decide upon the order himself. Baba called his local lovers and those who had come to attend the wedding of Arnavas and Naraman Dada Chanji. A large group from Bombay had come for that. And he called this group to Meherabad on the 23rd of December. And he sat in a chair at the head of Masaji's grave, where by his order another pit was dug and Chanji's bedroll was placed in it. Adi Sr. began by reading the message that Baba had given. And we'll flip over here. By the way, this was a model. This was the first model, not the first, the final model of the tower that I showed to the Mandali and to the trustees, and they agreed that this would be built. So these are the graves of Masaji and Chanji, and there is a plaque that has the discourse that Baba gave at this ceremony. As Baba sat there, he held a large platter of rose petals, and according to his wish, Adi began to read out the names of the departed ones. As each name was read, Baba sprinkled a few of the rose petals into the pit as he lovingly remembered each one. Though the list of names was completed, most of the rose petals still remained on the platter, which made some curious. So after a few seconds, Baba smiled and spelled out on his board, "These are for all those who will come in the future." And he stood and he poured the remaining roses into the pit. So the last thing after the list of names are carved on the marble, you can read that, we've also added "for those who are to come." So over the years, names were added to the list. As to how persons were selected to be on the list, the simple answer is, as Mehru put it, Baba gave a name and it was put on the list. No questions asked. In June of 1968, a final expanded list was complete, which Baba asked Erich to read out to him twice that month. Just a few months before Baba dropped the body. So that was the list that the trust felt should be on the tower. Erich, that was Erich's advice. The only exception to the 350 names that Erich read to Baba are the names of 3 people that were included by a trust resolution in 2001. They're Baba's brothers, Jal and Bayram Bayram's wife, Parinmai. So when I first came to Meherabad 44 years ago in 1976, Erich told me not to forget, there's the names. The names are inscribed in concentric circles on the marble. So here's a picture of me and Erich. He would remind me, don't forget to do the tower. The tower was the one project that Baba specifically ordered to be built. He said we needed facilities for education, medical, and so on. But this was the specific. He said he wanted a tower built on this spot. And that's really the only specific building that Baba ordered. And Erich would say, don't forget, you're doing all these other things. Don't forget this one. But I really had no idea what it ought to be like. I drew many sketches and built little models, and I would take them in and show them to Mani, Erich, and Rana were the main people at the trust office. Erich said that Baba's message should be included. So that's why there's a plaque with Baba's message. He also said he liked prisms. He liked the fact that they cast a rainbow like Baba's flag. Rano suggested a cenotaph, which is a small spire-like monument. And they all agreed that it should not be so big and so imposing that it could distract from the samadhi, the simplicity of the samadhi. The last model that I showed Mani, before she went to Baba, she said I was on the right track. But I still couldn't get it right. So more time passed. The archive building, the MPR, hundreds of Amartithi toilets and so on. And I knew I would have to, I was getting old, I would have to find the answer. I knew somehow I had to do that. But I couldn't get it right. There was no clear shape other than rising to a point from a wide bottom. And I was talking to Eric Nadel and telling him how I had to find the answer, but I'm running out of time. So Eric looked around the room. He went and pulled a book off the shelf. He said, I think I know what you're talking about. He flipped it through, he opened it up, and he said, here. And it was a drawing of a discovery by Italian mathematicians several hundred years ago of a shape formed by the equation xy equals 1. And that's a hyperbola, and it starts from level, and it gradually becomes vertical. And when that's rotated on its vertical axis, you get this shape. Hope you can see that. In mathematical terms, the shape that rises is always approaching vertical, but never quite reaches vertical until infinity. At the bottom, it just keeps approaching horizontal and never quite reaches horizontal until infinity. So when it's in 3 dimensions, at infinity, this line, this pointed object, gets so tiny it becomes it's nothing at infinity. And down here at the bottom, that circle gets bigger and bigger until it becomes everything at infinity. So it's a very clear 3D shape expressing Baba's everything in the nothing. The Om point, Hinduism, where the creation comes from this point. The mathematicians who came up with this were Christian, and they called it Gabriel's horn. The angel Gabriel blew the creation into existence through his horn. And I'll see if you can read it, but there's actually a reference to the trumpet, and wideness to narrowness is the path to excellence in the Quran. So the major religions seem to also have this image. We'll get into details here. So that's what it looks like today. I thought we could carve it, but that was a naive assumption. Fortunately, we have computers today, and we have computer-guided machines that can carve stone, and that's what we ended up doing. But the base of the tower is built in the shape of master in servitude, and it's built in stone that's from a quarry near Meherabad. The grave, let's see, is this? Ah, good. So this is the master in servitude symbol. This is Masaji and Chanji's grave. The same grave markers were disassembled and replaced exactly over the original grave. And this is where Baba sat, and this is where it all took place. And this is, on the marble, you can see it here, is Baba's discourse. And the master in servitude points to the Samadhi. So, I think now I'll just start switching slides. I may have something to say about them, or I may not. If I can, this is 10 years of work. Let's see how well I remember it. The spire. Obviously, we can't go all the way to infinity. So I thought the next best thing, make it transparent. And so it's built in glass. And at the same time, because Erich liked prisms, I had prisms made, and they're included in this spire. And when the sun shines at a certain angle, you get a rainbow, patch of rainbow color on the base. In order to test this theory, or at the time it was just this theory, I went and bought some prisms, and I built this little thing to scale and put it on my roof. Yeah, there we are. That was in 2009. Okay, 11 years ago. And I would orient it with a compass and see what time of day this little patch of color would last. And it worked. That was the model. And to make sure it did work, I put it up on top of the roof of this house, so it is 56 feet in the air from the ground. And sure enough, it worked. It moves. You won't always see it there. It has to be a sunny day, it has to be the right time of day and right time of year. But I also discovered something else. That when you looked up at the rainbow, the spire itself turned into these colors. So you move your head a little bit, it would go to all the different colors. It's a nice surprise. To make this work, the marble itself would not be strong enough to, at one point it's only 8 inches in diameter. It needed a backbone. And that backbone had to be really strong, and it had to be really small. So it was engineered to use a particular alloy of stainless steel. Everything, all the steel is stainless. We did everything we knew how to do and was possible to do to make this last as long as possible. I mean, the goal is 700 years. Don't know, but not because we didn't try. This is one of the miracles. These pipes, these stainless steel pipes, that some of them had 1 inch thick walls, and they're only 10 feet. There's like 4 of them. Where in the world would you get something like that? And I tried all over the world, Googled and emailed anyone that knew anybody or was near a factory or something. No one was gonna No one had them in stock. No one was going to make them for us. Not 1 or 2 pipes. But some guy in Bombay, who I found on the internet, said, "Sir, I will make it a matter of honor to find these pipes for you." And he did. And this is shop. He found these pipes. And they were the minimum what it would take to be able to make this strong and to withstand the force of the wind. And here's a guy that I found in Bombay who tested the steel. He's a government certifier. He takes the steel, he takes it to a lab, they press it and pull it, and he gives you a certificate. And they passed. This stuff was the real thing. And here they arrived at Meherabad. They arrived by truck. I don't even know, I never got to pay the guy. I don't know what trucking company it was. It just pulled up and dumped them. I was given his number by somebody. Oh, no, he called me. He had my number. And he said, "Where do you want me to put them?" And I said, "Well, do you know where Meherabad is?" He said, "Yes." "Which side of the Dooney do you want them?" And we've never found the guy. And that's a lot of money to transport all those pipes. This is AutoCAD drawing. The other thing is, another little miracle, is the appearance of Ty Provosty, who's an architect, American architect. Like I said, the computer machinery that need to do the carving had to have AutoCAD drawings, and I didn't do AutoCAD, so he said, "I can." And he did more than just draw them. He did a lot of engineering on it. But it's from here, like 1/4 of the way up to the top, there are actual cylinders, marble cylinders that are lowered over this stainless steel pipe. And then from here down, it's a concrete base, and the marble are pieces of 3 to 4 inch thick marble shaped like pieces of pie. I guess, well, you can see that. And this is the factory. Someone suggested I get a hold of these people, and they have a quarry in Mount Abu. And if you've ever seen Dilwara Temple, it's the most beautiful bit of marble work you've ever seen. And they have this very modern, advanced factory in Ahmedabad that uses computers to carve mainly Jain temples all over the world. We went there. He said, "Yeah, I can do it," and gave me a price that was huge. And I go, "Well, thank you very much," and went away. And finally, after a year, I realized that he was the only person that could do this. I really had no choice. So we went back. And I hemmed and hawed a little bit and said, "Is there something we can do to bring the price down? Can I use a little less quality marble or something?" And he said, in the beginning it was all business. Second time around, I don't know what happened to him, but he said, "I have decided this project has to be done. How much money, what can you afford?" And he ended up doing for a fraction of what he originally asked for. Those are the machines, or one of the many machines. And this is the marble. We looked in their marble yard and picked out the whitest marble we could find. Then came the plaque. decided to do that in granite. And these people agreed to do that too. So that's the model of the, so far we've just been showing pictures of the model. But the real thing turns out to look very much like the model. These are the granite blocks that make up the plaque stand. And can you see this is, I guess, can you see where it says Memorial Tower there and stuff? Oh, good. It's a little fuzzy, maybe it's my eyesight. But anyway, this is at the factory, they're putting it together. That's Baba's discourse. They could do that with a computer because it's a flat surface. The surface that the names are on is not a flat surface. It's a very complicated surface. So it had to all be done by hammer chisel. So now we just dug out the whole master servitude shape down to hard strata and started building up. Using jackhammers and pouring concrete and stonework. The stones came, as I said, they came from Niwasa and Wambori, that is near quarries near Meherabad. And they were hand carved. What I would do is make full-size plaster Paris models of each stone. Not each stone, each type of stone. And also stencils. So I don't know how many, but there's probably 200 or so stones with little hearts carved in them, just by some guy tapping away. Like that. Can't really do that anymore.
135.
135? 135? Huey knows. Okay, good. How do you know? Okay.
That's just around the
Oh, well, that isn't even half then. Yeah, I mean, they're all around the outside too. So, with forms, little stainless, not stainless, sheet metal forms that showed the edges that I wanted, and plaster Paris models, the masons went ahead and carved all these stones. Ah, this is what the big ones look like when they arrived. They're huge. So we had to, actually, and it's still there, we actually had to buy a crane and erect it there. And also a stone saw with a bed that rolls back and forth. So these huge stones were, because some of them, well, there's some that are this wide, they may be only this thick, but you needed a stone that big to get that stone. And then they were rolled onto this thing, that's big 3-foot diameter saw blade, and cut into blocks. And then a mason with a little electric grinder wheel would roughen the shape, and then they, by hand, would chisel the final finish. And these are some of them. Yeah, there's one I was talking about. That's almost 4 feet long, this thing here. It's a big stone that came out of there. I don't know when this tree was born, but I believe it was there when Baba, because the graves are here. I suspect he chose it because of the shade from this tree. I don't know how long. Does Mark know how long these trees live? No? Okay. This whole section here was actually cantilevered out. We didn't dare dig a foundation for it because we would have damaged the roots of the tree. So this is actually supported over here somewhere, and reinforced concrete is holding this section up. So underneath the tree was not disturbed. So now we're going to put up the stainless steel pipe spine. Everything is basically done custom made. These anchor bolts are like 1 meter long and about 1.5 inches in diameter. The nuts themselves have been custom made. You see, we only need 4 of them. So a well-equipped factory with skilled labor is necessary, but then you're only making 4. So these are base plates for the pipes. So there's no motivation for a factory owner to stop work on things that he's making money doing to make these little things. You couldn't pay him enough for one of those, for these 3 things, for the time it took him and the machinery that it took to make them. But somehow these folks here at this factory and many other people who weren't acquainted with Baba, but they somehow understood that they should do this. So they made pretty big sacrifices in terms of time and money to do this stuff. This is an MIDC. When I first came here, there was no electricity. And now, the other thing works, I'm expected to weld this with argon shielded TIG or MIG welding. I'm not sure which one it is now. Where am I going to do that? At Meherabad or even Nagar at the time. Couldn't even buy a Western toilet in Nagar. Had to go to Pune to get one with a cast iron flush tank. But sure enough, MIDC had argon gas shielded welding and stainless steel welding rods, and they put it together. And the big truck to bring it out. Crane to lift it in place. This done in 2 stages because the marble had to be slipped over the top. The first few pieces of marble were so heavy we could never lift them 60 feet in the air. We could never get a crane big enough for that here in Nagar. So we had to do the spine in 2 stages. These are putting fishing pipe. Oh, here, this is interesting to builders. Laser levels, GPS devices, all that sort of stuff. We didn't have. So here's how they leveled this. Made a large plumb bob just out of steel. Tied a piano wire to it. Submerged the plumb bob in a bucket of motor oil. And measured the distance between the pipe and the piano wire at the top and at the bottom. The reason for the motor oil is that the wind it would stay in one place and the wind wouldn't move it around, so you could be much more accurate. And I think it probably did just as well as we would have done with a laser. They had to make wrenches big enough to tighten it. We had to fish a lot of wire through there. We had fiber optic glass cables for the lights. We had copper wire for lightning. We had to have holes for draining any possible condensation, and a way out for all the water, and a way in for air to keep it clean and from deteriorating. That's us lowering a light bulb down inside this pipe, and we could drill holes and find out the level inside, so we knew how much concrete to fill up, what level to fill the pipe up. Around the first stage of the stainless steel pipe, we poured reinforced concrete. A lot of the getting the shape right was done by drawing full-scale curves on computer and tiling the paper together and then cutting it out of plywood. Couldn't have done it without a computer. So it couldn't have been done 44 years ago. And this is the first ready-mix truck I think we ever used at Meherabad for the concrete. It made the forms. Everything's a one-off. And there it is. That's the concrete footing. So above here, now we're going to put the now we're going to put the heavy marble cylinders. Then we're going to put the second stage of the pipe on top of that. Then build scaffolding, and with a pulley block, lower the rest of the marble cylinders. And then after that, the scaffolding comes down, and the tiers will be bolted to this concrete. So scaffolding's gone up. The second stage of pipe is being fitted. The marble's actually translucent, so we painted the pipe white. It's not very translucent, but it's enough to possibly make a difference. These are the shop drawings for the tiers, we call them. They're the pavers. They're very complicated, as you can see. Curve this way, curve that way. And these are the cylinders. And that's the top, although we didn't do the top this way. We had to make a plaster Paris model, and then took it to Meherabad, where they would photograph it with a 3D camera and then feed that information to the computer. So these are the tiers. They're about 1 meter long and somewhere around 1 meter or more wide. But you can see how complicated. They also had ridges in them because they're supported by stainless steel brackets. They're not set in mortar. And they assembled them in the factory in Ahmedabad and then took it apart and sent it to Meherabad. So the next step was because we've got the marble cylinders up there, and the scaffolding is still up, and that next thing is to make something to hold the glass spire together. And that all had to be done in stainless steel. And it had to support the prisms. It had to be removable in case someday the glass breaks or needs to be replaced. And it had to rest on the pipe and not on the marble. The marble, this was very heavy with all the glass and all the steel. The marble would get crushed by the weight of this thing. So those were challenges. Some pieces were cast, some pieces were welded sheet metal. And then there are just these little, this is only 2.5 inches or something. We only needed 4 of them. But they're very complicated. And a good sized factory had to pretty much stop what they were doing and make these 4 little things. I've never made anything like them before or after. But they were necessary, for one, to hold the plate glass in here, to hold the prism, to keep it from falling out. That's the plaster Paris model of the top piece. The stuff that's being fabricated, it's not perfect. It's, they're made from this point to this point. Might not be exactly the same as from this point to this point. It might be an 1/8 of an inch difference. So all this stuff kind of had to be, what would you say, handmade. It was handmade. The prisms weren't all the same. So we took the actual prisms, we took the actual stainless steel cradle, poured the plaster Paris around it, fiddled with it, carved it, and got it right, and then sent it for the marble to the marble people. That's the cradle that will hold all the glass prisms and the plate glass. And that's the marble piece that once they had carved it. Now they're sliding the cylinders over the thing. So these cylinders get lifted all the way up to here and then lowered down to there. Here we are. They celebrate. And then we put the top piece on. This is a drawing of the spire. The spire has the 4 prisms. It's got a steel, what we call a cradle, that would support those. And plate glass, it's hard to see, but there's plate glass. There's also a pipe going up the very middle. And inside that pipe are 4 fiber optic cables. We wanted a light in the top. So to make that happen without having to go up and change bulbs or have any kind of electricity up there, it was, these are the lenses, by the way, just goes up and turns around, and so there are no bulbs to change, there's no maintenance involved up there. And these are the copper lightning rods, lightning arrestor stuff. The company that we found to get the lightning arrestor stuff, it was Erico. They're the prisms. They're actually mounted up top to bottom. But they're sealed with silicone.
Did you say where the resin came from?
Oh, no, I didn't. That's a good story, actually. First of all, no one would do a prism. No one would build pour glass for 4 blocks the shape. And I, emailed and begged all these glass companies until on the internet I found some family business in Shanghai, and I emailed them and they said, well, we'll try. If we get a big order for this type of glass, because it had to be non-expansive glass, we'll do it for you. So a year went by and they finally said, look, we're never going to get an order like that, so thank you, but we can't do this. And I had no plan B. So I begged. And I sent them Bible literature. And I asked them would they please do this? And they said, okay, we'll try, we'll see. And a few weeks later they said, we've poured the thing. You should be receiving it in about 3 months. This glass, being solid, pure glass, they have to cool it down about 1 degree a day or something. If it's allowed to cool, what's the word? If the outside's cooler than the inside, it creates stresses and it will crack. So it's a big deal making glass this thick. And sure enough, they did it. And I said, okay, now air freight it. I don't care what it costs to transport it. Just make sure that they don't break when they get here. And they said, okay. And they sent it to Madras instead of Bombay, instead of Mumbai. So in Madras, there's this package. And the custom has no idea what it's worth or what to do with it. Fortunately, Behram Irani, a shipping agent in Bombay, managed to get it out of there, but they just threw it on the back of a truck. And so I get a call, it's arrived in MIDC. And I go out there and I find the truck. It wasn't even easy to find. The only thing in it was this broken up plywood box with some styrofoam on the floor. I didn't have the courage to open it at the time. So I dragged it into the trust Jeep and brought it home and went to bed. And the next morning, I went out and took a look and they were fine. Yeah. So this shows some of the kind of siliconing. Everything was done with either Teflon pads, because no steel should touch the glass, no steel should touch the marble. So everything had to be gasketed, and they were all kind of weird shapes. So they were either made with Teflon pads, or Huey made them with silicone. Just shaped them and made them. Okay. This is the glass, the plate glass that goes on top. Here are those lights, just bright lenses. If this glass were clear all the way up, then you'd just see these 4 lenses. So we decided to etch this glass. I don't know if Nadia is Nadia here? No. Okay. So I asked Nadia to design a design for about the top third of the glass, so that the lenses would be covered, and the top half of or top section of the thing would glow rather than just be a glaring light bulb. So this was an experiment, again, everything was experimented with. Well, this is what I'm talking about, the gasketing. And everyone's a different shape and size. That's the farmhouse where we worked. Somehow Bob took a photo like that. It looks beautiful, doesn't it? So, putting the glass thing together, one of the tricky bits was keeping it clean inside. You couldn't really work inside, yet silicone had to be applied to these joints. And Huey figured out a way to just keep it from gobbing up and going inside. And then we had to figure out how we're going to raise and lower it evenly, because the inside had to look good, but we had no access to the inside. So we built this, what would you call it? It's this contraption that would raise and lower the glass pieces. This is these are the lenses for this fiber optic lights, and all this stainless steel caps, and they're all just one-off things. Silicone. Couldn't have done it without silicone either. There's Huey doing the final cleaning with the little windshield wipers. And Bob, what were you doing, Bob? Keeping it from falling on him? What was he doing? Oh, so you could reach up. All right, yeah. So then it was all put in a box, and the top was ready. Let's see, what's next? Oh yeah, here. This is interesting. The marble and the steel spine expand and contract at different rates. So had to do two things. One, you had to support the marble so it didn't just wobble around, but it also had to move smoothly up and down as the steel would expand more than the marble. So Teflon shims were on every corner, or you'll see them better in some cases, were there. So it kept the marble from doing that, but at the same time it could slide up and down. Then we had to be careful because at no time should this thing shrink below the marble and have the weight of the spire sitting on the marble. At the same time, we couldn't leave a joint this big. We had to get a decent, and I don't know what it would end up being, Huey, half an inch? Yeah. But we couldn't make a mistake with that. So Huey actually measured the difference on the hottest day of the summer and coldest day of the winter, and saw okay, these are the extremes. And that's how much we left we were able to cut it off to that point. And then the top was put on, or replaced. And we have all this stuff that has to go inside. The lenses, the lightning rod, the fiber optic cable, and then it all goes inside this stainless steel cap. And the lightning rod. The lightning rod had to not only be a copper rod at the top, but it had to bond to the pipe in places. Now there's no place to, the thing's running inside the pipe, so how do you attach copper cable to the inside of the pipe? So we had to figure that one out. And, you know, had machined this thing that the correct diameter, correct curve of the inside of the pipe, clamp the wires to this, and then from the outside, yeah, and then put a nice copper surface so that it conducted enough electricity, and then from the outside, find the holes and bolt it from the outside. These are the, yeah, and this shows where the Teflon shims go. This shows how much above we, now this looks like less than ½ an inch, but that's because we put in copper washers in this point. Again, we made our own copper washers. Now here we go. Now our baby is on its way. It's going to get lifted by a crane onto a platform and then lifted up to the top. Lots of nervous people standing around on this one. And it gets inserted in this pipe. And there it is. And then we caulk this part. This is a tool that cuts the glass. These are the glass cables or glass fibers that the light actually transmits the light. Or, I don't know what the process is called, but. And those are the lenses. And this is the fiber optic cable going down. And this is the lightning rod. And then it's covered with this cap. That was in the evening when we had just finished. You could actually see the library study hall up here. This is, you don't really get to see this, but Nadia did a lovely design on the top of that thing. There's the library. To take this copper and lightning conductor, a very elaborate array of copper strips, and in order that these, wherever there were joints, that over years, over 700 years, they won't corrode, we used what they call exothermic welding. Well, we also bonded everything together, all the reinforcing, even the anchor bolts that went into the ground. Reinforcing was all covered with epoxy paint. So in order to be sure that the copper, where you had to put two pieces of copper together, and if you can't just bolt them together, that would last for a normal amount of time, but not for centuries. A way to do it is just melt it all together. So there's a graphite mold. You put the two pieces in there. You put some powder that also has copper in it, I think, and an explosive powder, like gunpowder or something. And you just set it off. And it all becomes a welded piece. They're doing it down here. And after that, the ray was buried in bentonite, which is a ground earthing enhancer. Like I said, we did everything we knew to make this thing as permanent as possible. We tested it after the whole thing, and that says 0.4, yeah, which means that it works, right, Huey? No, I mean, if it did, we may not know, but I don't think so. This is a simple diagram of venting, because you've got to allow air to come in and water to go out. So there are little holes everywhere, and there are little gaps everywhere, and there are little drain gutters everywhere. And this is kind of how it works. You can see the little straws sticking out here. That's the top. That's how the actual air would escape from the top. There's the little hole. We had fun working on the top because every day we ended up with some wild prism thing. These are little gutters for little rope wicks and drain into the garden from. I think Jeff is putting sealer on the marble. The same kind of, colorful, it's not a reflection, it's an actual, but so you're also not looking directly at the sun, so it's a refraction of the sun. Now it's time to put the tiers on the bottom. The scaffolding has come down, and we're lining out the tiers. How are we doing on time? I guess we're doing all right. So here we are. We're bringing in the tiers. They're being supported with brackets. Again, stainless steel brackets. They're all being custom made because the shapes are all different. So, I as usual, just made models of everything. Took them to these factories. Pads of Teflon pads and silicone gasketing. We made, it's my dog Tilly. We made wooden facsimiles, full-size templates for the marble, so that we could place the brackets. We could actually locate where the bolts for the brackets would go. That's one of the brackets with the wooden thing, and then and of course all these things had to have little extra carved places for the brackets. I thought we could carve these things. Not really. It's the full-size plywood templates is how we did it. It was an exciting time because we weren't used to this happening. And, you know, we're there all day long, so it was really pretty neat. That's the final tier. So it's all in place. The light was working here at this point. I don't know if when exactly this happened, but now we're going to the plaque stand in the granite and the plaque with the Baba's discourse. Lifting the flower pots in place. Now the names, Haiti and Michael have arrived at this time, and their assignment was to line out and, well, to draw the names. There were some skilled marble carvers that were going to come and carve them. So what we did, first was Sheila Krinsky from Shariah Press had been given a list of the names and had on a computer figured out the spacing and the curve. So here's Haiti. She's making a piece of wood with just some pencil leads in it so she can draw these concentric lines. Then we printed in full size the names on newsprint, blank newsprint, and glued them on. This thin paper, the carvers could chisel right through the paper, and then with just water we could wash off the paper. There's Michael and Haiti. The carvers have started. There they are. Took them 3 months?
Yes, 3 months.
They were 3 months, yeah. Wonderful man. Hmm?
Just one man?
No, 2. Yeah. The marbles, the letters were so nicely done. I didn't want to fill them up. Originally I thought I would just fill them up with epoxy, so we didn't have to worry about rain sitting in there, but I didn't. They were so beautifully carved that I didn't want to spoil that. So we ended up getting this paint, this very special paint that they use at the National Cemetery in America. But it's a very hazardous material, and it had to be flown, it had to be packed by a licensed packer. It had to be delivered by this licensed packer to the courier. The courier put it on a special plane that didn't have commercial passengers in a hazmat vault. Cost about enough to bring somebody over here on pilgrimage, but we got the paint. Okay, now the symbols. I think it was close to 10 years ago, I asked Tim Garvin, who is a jeweler and makes ceramic jewelry, would he make the symbols? I'd been to Thailand, and when they have all those wonderful temples all with glazed tile decorations on them. So he took it up and made molds. He designed them, made molds. He's got a long story that's very interesting. I won't try to tell it. But the symbols have a particular pattern. They all have the same pattern, but different colors. The Buddhist wheel is mostly blue, the Om is orange, the Islam is green, and then Master in Servitude is the same pattern again, but includes all the colors. And they were inlaid into the marble. At the time of the inauguration, it landed right on the cross, the Christian cross. Here it is on the fire urn, the Parsi Zoroastrian urn. Around, we planted flowers and greenery. The flowers would represent the flowers that Baba put in when he heard the names read out. It also keeps people from jumping over and walking on this thing. The joints are being done in this photo with silicone, very carefully with masking tape and now the paving. The plinth itself, the tower's pretty much done. The joints have been silicone, the letter's been painted. So we've got a different kind of marble, not a pure white marble, but it's white because it didn't want it to get too hot. People will be able to go up there in the summer without laying rugs down, which I hope never has to happen.
One name with a bracket, who is died at the Duni. I don't know who died at the Duni. Like that one name followed by a bracket, who died at the Duni.
These were the lists that were kept, and lots of them were had little comments. Whether I honestly don't have those names memorized. But if it was on the list that Baba read to, that Eretz read to Baba twice in 1968, that's how it is, how they're presented on the tower.
Comments.
Pardon me?
Even the comments.
Even the comments, it added the charm to it. We're reconstructing the Masaji and Chanji's grave now, and exactly over where they're buried, or where the Masaji's buried and the bedroll is buried. This is Michael touching up the letters in the plaque. This is the, I didn't show it too well, but told you about the paint, this very special paint that we did on the letters. Some gold leaf. That's the finished thing. Here's Haiti. She's cleaning everything off. And she's using acid in this case, and wearing a mask. Here she is again. We put an apron around the outside. And to beautify the apron, we have this little heart motif with stencils. So she's drawing the heart motif and then painting it, and then level the stone and pour acid all over it. And that eats the stone where there is no paint. And then the paint gets peeled off, and you end up with this design. Here's the guy laying it. So these are kind of finished pictures now. Clearing the land and watering the garden and having the inauguration. And Baba was very kind to give us, there was a very cloudy day the day before and a very cloudy day the day after. But on the day, it was a nice sunny day and we got this. Yeah. So people are coming now regularly to see it. And I took that just about 2 nights ago. Went over there at night, and we got a flood light and so on. So that wasn't bad. 5:30. Jai Baba. Thank you.